I think you have, I see you have this one. Yeah.
We're just waiting Tony and Dave to come in, but I'm not sure if they will.
Yeah, just get somebody to call Tony's office.
This is the ID if you need it in the last one.
Thank you. Yeah. Get somebody to call Tony's office. We'll get started in a few minutes. We're just waiting on the solicitor. Might have to turn that off. No, just turn your computer off. We'll get started in a few minutes. We're just waiting on the might have to turn that off. No, just turn your started in a few minutes. We're just waiting on the might have to turn that off. Sorry, in a few minutes. We're just waiting on the just get out of Zoom.
Yeah, no. Wasn't intentional.
No, I know.
My computer has it from the other side. Tony's just logging on, Bill.
I didn't use mine.
My computer has it from the other side. Tony's just logging on, Bill. My computer has it from the other side. Tony's just logging on, Bill. Tony's just logging on, Bill. Go ahead and start it.
It's delayed a second. It is starting now. It's live right now.
Okay.
So we should be getting on momentarily.
Okay.
I'm gonna move here. If he's on, just give me the thumbs up. Let's see the yellow results. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah. Made a note of that. All right, well, we're waiting for the solicitor. We can get started. So this is the preliminary review committee for the Settlers Green proposed project. In attendance is Jim Patterson of the Planning Board, myself, Bob Ruley, the Director of Planning Community Development, and also the Administrative Officer for the Planning Board, Fred Massey, who is the Chair of the Planning Board, Tony Cavallo, who is the Building Official, Andy Giles from Fuss and O'Neill, John Himlin from Woodward and Curran, Tom Principe from Principe Engineering, Michael Bisco, the applicant, William Landry, the attorney for the applicant, Fire Chief James Souza, and Sue Rabideau from Bristol County Water Authority. Little unusual having to do the meeting this way, so I appreciate everyone's patience in working with us. Here's, Bill, this is how I would like to have the meeting go. I don't think there's a need to spend a lot of time summarizing the project. We know what it is. I would like to go through some, in my mind, I'm not sure what public meetings are going to look like when we get to the public hearing standpoint going forward. So in fairness to the planning board and in fairness to the public, I would like to be able to share with you what we see as those missing pieces before we get to that point. If without the information we're going to ask for, or some of the materials that we're going to ask for, I don't think it's fair to have a public meeting and then have to have another meeting, particularly when it's going to be difficult for the public to be in the room. Are you okay with that?
I understand the nature of the request. I'm not sure what you're going to be asking us for beyond the submission we made. So can we go through your?
Sure. Yep. So this is a comprehensive permit application. The authority for the applicant to submit an application for this under Rhode Island General Law 45-53-1 et sec, and then Warring Zoning Ordinance Section 32-153 et sec. This is the preliminary review committee. Our duties are to evaluate the needs for affordable housing, review the project, and make a recommendation to the planning board, which is also referred to as the permitting board. The committee will issue findings of fact based on the materials provided in making the recommendation to the permitting board. With respect to the affordable housing needs, I think we acquiesce that we are not meeting the state requirement on affordable housing units. We still average about 4.5% of our total inventory being dedicated rental, affordable rental housing. 10% is the requirement. In your application, Mr. Landry, you pointed out that we don't have an accepted affordable housing plan. So I don't think we need to, we're not challenging any of the validity of your claim that we're not meeting the affordable housing requirement. That having been said, one of the findings of fact is the determination of whether the proposed development will create any adverse conditions in terms of the environment and the health, safety, and welfare of current town residents or occupants of the proposed housing development. Going through the master plan checklist, what we still would like to see are the soil valuations in the groundwater supply data. We'd like to see the landscape plan, and we would like to have a narrative providing the technical justification that the development will not impact noise, air pollution, views, shadows, etc. The property in question is located within the Kickamuit Reservoir Watershed Overlay District. As such, the requirements of the Watershed Overlay District are applicable. 15% of impervious surface water requirement is an environmental control and not a waive part of the comprehensive permit process, and is not discretionary. One of the waivers that the applicant is asking for is to increase the impervious surface area to 30%. Currently, the Kickamuit Reservoir is under a total maximum daily load requirement for phosphorus mitigation. The town actually holds the DEM MS4 permit, and it's the town's obligation to control the potential for further water quality degradation and put the watershed limits in place. We would like to see a stormwater analysis report in order to verify the stormwater management system is designed in accordance with both section 32-141 and the Rhode Island Stormwater Design and Installation Standards Manual. We will need to see hydrology and hydraulics modeling in order to evaluate the impacts of the waiver request for lot coverage. Eventually, you're going to need to submit an erosion and sediment control report, as well as a operations and maintenance report. With respect to the sanitary sewer, we need to see the flow projections and pollutant load from the proposed development. We would like to see what provisions are being made to protect existing infrastructure, adjacent wells, road restoration, dewatering, and rock removal in Denver Avenue. That area where you're suggesting you're going to do your sewer tie-in is at 18 feet depth, with other sections of the sewer line in that point at 24 feet depth. Additionally, without the benefit of the flow projections, but using industry standards, the project is estimated to generate about 100 gallons per minute of sanitary. Presently, there is a 24-inch pipe from the Patterson pump station up to Metacom Avenue, where it connects to a 15-inch pipe. That pipe then connects to a 21-inch pipe at the corner of Vernon and Metacom. The maximum capacity of that 15-inch pipe right now is 1,400 gallons per minute. The average current flow estimated is 1,400 is where we're at right now. That's the max of that pipe. So the 100 that is estimated to come from this project is going to create a bottleneck at that section. So more than likely, that section of pipe is going to have to be enlarged. Bristol County Water needs to have a hydraulic analysis report completed. They've indicated that you've agreed to pay to have that done, but that has not happened yet. And then also we need to see the domestic and fire flow demand calculations as required. In your submittal, I don't see any elevations or floor plans for the single family homes. There is no identification of construction type. There is nothing with respect to exterior finish materials. We're probably going to need to see some evidence as to what the title is on Dallas Avenue. I know that had been an issue previously. There's a series of waivers that you're looking for. Those will be addressed when you go to the planning board. And then also there's most likely at that point, we're going to require a traffic study. So those are my initial concerns and questions and requests. I'm going to now ask other members of the committee to raise any other issues that they may have. And I'll start with Mr. Patterson to my left.
I guess my greatest concern would be the impact on the existing sanitary sewer infrastructure that we have. It's not just at the connection point, but it seems to me that the impact is going to be all the way through the system, right down to the new processing plant that has been constructed. And past experience I've had, that can be not only disruptive, but also extremely expensive.
John Hinman from Woodward and Curran is here. We've looked at that. Patterson Street Pump Station has capacity to take what's coming to it. We are not at our limit in terms of what the wastewater management plant can process. So, I mean, a valid point, but not right. The biggest concern with the sanitary right now is that 15-inch pipe along Metacom Avenue. And it's not going to work the way this is designed right now. Are there any other comments?
You've already covered several of the ones that I had. I guess the one that I'm also interested in is the plans and specifications for proposed single-family home.
Okay. Mr. Massey.
Yes, I have a number of concerns. Under the application for the comprehensive permit, it says at least 25% of the proposed units will be deed restricted. That number really doesn't put much of a dent in our 10% required affordable housing in Warren. This plan is being proposed under the aegis of affordable housing. So 25% seems like a small percentage if that is in fact the argument for granting this extremely large and tightly packed development. So at least 25% is a start, I would think, to discussion about how many affordable housing units would be allowed in this area. And I note that you've included both the apartments and the houses in that. But I would want to see significantly more than at least 25% if the argument is to be made that this is a means by which we can significantly improve affordable housing in Warren.
Bob?
Under the waivers.
Fred, can I stop you for a second? Tony, go ahead.
Bob, in Please tell Fred I apologize for cutting in. This is Tony DeSisto, the town solicitor. But to just expand on Fred's first comment on this matter, do we have a rundown as to what percentage increase this development will have in the percentage of affordable housing units in the town? If 25% of the units here are going to be affordable, so that's one number, but there's an increase, the other 75% are market value, what effect will that have on the percentage of affordable housing units in Warren? Is there any effect at all?
Maybe 1%, maybe not even that much.
Okay. I want to just put into context Mr. Massey's comments on that as we go forward on this thing, because as I think he's noting, unlike a 100% affordable housing development, that's something that always has to be factored in when there's a lesser percentage. And I apologize for jumping in.
No, Mr. Landry?
I don't know if you can hear me or not, but also in context, it would be about an additional 30 affordable units, which is 15 times more units than the town has generated since 2004, 16 years.
Did you hear that? So Mr. Landry is saying that the number of units they're creating are 30% more than what's been created in Warren in the last, since 2004, which is true. I mean, we've averaged 4.5% is the total number of deed restricted affordable units. You know, we could argue that if we were to do a census of rental housing, there's certainly more than 10% that fall within the 80% median income. But to Mr. Massey's point, the needle is not being moved that much in terms of, you know, we're not going to go to 5.5% by adding these units.
Yeah, yes, if I may, and I apologize for bringing this issue up because I know you want to focus on the more technical issues, but I'm familiar with the argument that Bill just made on this. And, you know, I think you have to put it into context. We're talking about 2004, but for the bulk of that, that was during the recession times. There wasn't a lot of development in Warren. So to put it into context, you have to see how many total units were developed at that time. My only point on this is that when you're arguing percentages, and I think this is what the chair, Mr. Massey, brought up, you always have to balance that off with these developments that, yes, there'll be some more affordable housing, but you have to balance out the amount of the non-affordable units coming in too. And that really isn't an issue for here. I know you want to do the technical stuff, but I just wanted to put those things out. These are common issues that come up in these type of developments, not just here in Warren, but of course around the state.
Thank you.
And under the waivers, there's number 3, parking lot requirements, looking for a waiver of a minimum of 1 island for each parking spaces. And then number 5, a waiver requiring street trees along the street pavement. Both of those waivers suggest a density of development that seems completely out of character for the size of this piece of property. And the fact that that's being requested to me suggests a level of profit over concern for quality of life in this area. You take away the street trees, you create large empty parking lots of concrete and asphalt. That has nothing to do with maintaining the quality of life, which is earlier claimed that it doesn't significantly impact the what or the existing uses of this area. To me, those 2 waivers are frankly inappropriate for a development of this size. Waiver of any requirement for consent by landowners other than the applicant to subdivide or develop the subject property by reason of any fact or circumstance involving any prior subdivision of land development. There are those 4 houses, so essentially this is saying that those have no place in this later development. I know that when we passed those 4 houses in the past, that was with the idea that any further development would be subject to approval by those folks. It's a matter of dancing about to say, okay, well, those 4 lots were never sold, so now nobody has to approve that. But that was not the intent when the planning board gave that permission. We were looking at it as a means of providing relief to the developer to say, go ahead and build these 4 without going through a full site review. And now, you know, we're being sidelined. Our intent is essentially being ignored, and that does not fit with the kind of spirit of cooperation that we were operating in when we passed that for the 4-house subdivision. In the statement of consistency with comprehensive plan, affordable housing plan, the town of Tiverton's comprehensive plan is quoted. You'll want to correct that because we're in Warren, not Tiverton. One would think that you would look that stuff over before you present it to us. The plan explains that this was driven, sorry, let me get back to statement of consistency with comprehensive plan, affordable housing plan. Plan explains this is driven by the fact that water and sewer are available and there are very few other such sites that could accommodate such development. This was a plan that you're quoting from a previous planning director that had not looked at all at the infrastructure that was available in this area in any detail. It was at best a fluffy approach to where potentially affordable housing could go, and that water and sewer, as Mr. Woolley noted, particularly sewer, is an issue. You mentioned that the town's largest multifamily development, Kickamuit Village, is not far from the subject site. I guess that is subjective, not far. We're a pretty small town, so I guess in terms of Texas size, it wouldn't be that far. But in terms of Warren, Kickamuit Village is quite a distance from this site. So to me, that siting is irrelevant.
In fairness to Mr. Landry, I think you were lifting that out of that previous housing resolution. Yeah, those are the towns. I mean, because at that point, it says that that is the largest multifamily complex in Warren. And that's not true anymore. We have both Tourister 1 and Tourister 2 online, which have more units. But I do want to make mention that that wasn't Mr. Landry's statement. It was lifted out of the document.
Again, you know, that my initial objection to it stands in that it was done by a planning director without full vetting by the town, and really has no the power of legal purpose to me in this matter. That this siting is somehow accepted by the town. I don't see that. The planning board never voted on that. And so as a consequence to me, that was at best a rogue employee's decision to present this information to the town without proper vetting. And frankly, I hold the town council responsible for not having done their homework when they approved it temporarily before it became force of law. So those are my concerns. This is an intense development of a piece of land, and it feels very much out of character. I also noticed that there were some people who were not included in the list of abutters. I would assume that all of the houses that are immediately across Denver Avenue should have been included in the notice to abutters. Where's that? Bob, do you know where that is? Oh, there it is, yeah. List of abutters, the 200 abutters list. It does not include Charles and Catherine Thibodeau. So it doesn't appear to me that the 200-foot, all the 200-foot abutters were included in that listing, based on the map that you posted about it. I would assume all of those people along Denver Avenue immediately adjacent would have been identified. I see more last ever realty than I do. Is there any reason why they would not be included, Mr. Lewis?
Nope. No, they should be included.
Yeah, but we always update the parties list before we send one. Yeah, there should be some people on. I do that. I don't know. I didn't do the parties list. We always updated. No notices that have gone out to parties. Master plan. Hearing date established. So.
Okay. So you'd want to correct that.
Ms. Miller, Jane Miller is a member of the planning board. She is joining us remotely. Ms. Miller, do you have any comments or questions?
Most of the comments I have already been brought up, so I won't repeat those. The couple main points is that I understand the applicant is working with us to get us a completed application at the appropriate times of this permitting timeline process, but I was surprised to not see an actual hydrology report. And I know we would be looking for environmental impact and other type of impact statements. So I understand that those are probably coming, but it's hard at a technical review committee meeting to actually review the meat of this, especially with our engineers on hire in attendance. And the other main concern that I had was the impervious surface increase within the watershed overlay district. I reviewed all the other waivers and I understand a lot of them, the appropriateness of waiving them for a comprehensive permit, but I would be concerned with looking at such an increase in impervious surface for this location, especially if they're asking for other waivers that really offset and increase the impervious surface. If they actually didn't ask for a couple of the other waivers, we actually would probably have a reduction in impervious surface within this watershed overlay district. So I think those are the only couple of points that I wanted to make.
Thank you. Fire Chief Souza, do you have any comments?
My concern would be the available water at the hydraulic study that on water act for some I'm curious to see if the building has size available gallons, pressure of gallons available at that hydrant.
Sue?
So our preliminary looking at this, there is probably over 1,000 gallons a minute at that hydrant, which is enough for 2 families. So we just need to see the fire demand for the pumps that are going to be in the larger building, the fire system, and do a hydraulic analysis of that. So static pressure is good there, which is a concern in a lot of Bristol County, like about 60 psi, which is good for our system. So we don't foresee an issue, and certainly these 4 houses that originally got approved, there was not an issue. More of the fire demand for pumps in a large building. So we can't do our hydraulic analysis. We would have to send it to our consultant who created a report and everything, but we need demand from their engineers to the first. So that point we need that analysis.
I guess my final comment would be that if in fact you've got to add pumps or whatever additional infrastructure you have to do, and if you have to replace that pipe on Metacom, what does that due to your pro forma, and does that impact how Rhode Island Housing looks at their eligibility letter? Because that's going to skew, obviously, the numbers. And again, given just looking at the pro forma, then there's not a lot of detail that anticipating the amount of site work that's going to need to be done in order to do the sewer tie-in. More likely, Denver Avenue is going to have to be completely reconstructed, and it seemed like your number on site work for that is a little bit light. So that's all that our initial comments are. We're happy to respond to your reaction, or if you've got questions for our engineers regarding either the sewer or the stormwater issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be helpful to have a protocol getting information, and normally conference that we would provide demand information or water company that would work with Woodard and Current, giving them whatever technical information that they need to have that discussion about that. This is the first we're hearing that there's some point in the process where it might have to be large. Those things come up. If a pipe needs to be enlarged or pump capacity needs to be increased, those are things that are not out of question for us to do and add as part of the project. There should be a discussion about pay for that and how it's going to be allocated to this project.
That's a short discussion.
Well, it may be. I mean, we got to get at the number first. I haven't heard anybody say that. We're adding 2% to the town's existing sewer capacity, so we're not talking about some overwhelming new thing, proportionally. And we'd like to try to get to the bottom of what this bottleneck is all about, why it hasn't been a problem so far, and why, if there's such a bottleneck there, perhaps there shouldn't be any new additions to that water line or any other commercial uses and uses other than affordable housing. It's that active limit right now. But we can look at these things. These are not showstopper issues. This is a question of how it gets done as opposed to when it gets done. The pump stations have recently been studied. We're fortunate to have recent careful emphasis on what the pump station capacities are. It's got good engineers. We've got good engineers. The final design of stormwater and sewer and what upgrades will be necessary is not a master plan issue. It's a preliminary plan issue. If there were no sewers in the town, we had bad soils and couldn't build septic systems here to support this density, that would be a showstopper issue. But we're talking about how and how much, and we're happy to engage Woodard and Current in that discussion to figure out how much and evaluate that. And even at this stage, we're not designing stormwater systems here. We're not having drainage calculations. Those are not master plan issues. Those are preliminary plan issues. But we appreciate the comments that have been made. I do want to make a couple of clarifications. The number of units we're adding in affordable housing is not 30% higher, it's 30 times higher than anything the town's been able to generate on its own without some type of unusual measure like the comprehensive permit. The affordable housing plan that the town has right now was adopted by the council. It's the only affordable housing plan that the town has. Whether the town thought hard about it or not thought hard about it, I think they accurately identified this site and its proximity to the sewer line as something you don't see every day in a substantially built out community like Warren, where much of the unbuilt land, open land, has some severe environmental constraints out in the Jewison area, for example. All those things noted in that plan, and those things are still valid. A site like this is wasted and goes to market rate development it'll make it even more difficult to get anywhere near the 10% minimum threshold.
Well, I mean, I'll disagree with you on that. I mean, we can't, a couple of things. I mean, we wanted to look at the Metacom as part of the initial analysis by Woodward and Kern. You asked that, we took it out. But that's not to say in the future, you know, I could argue that one of the reasons for denial is that we have a plan for affordable housing. But we don't have that plan finalized yet, but I could make the statement that as part of the redevelopment of Metacom Avenue and the zoning changes, that by creating mixed income opportunities there, we have the ability to create almost 1,000 units of housing if that's what we wanted to do. Upgrades to that infrastructure would probably be something we would look to the developer to do. So I mean, it's not a fair statement to say there's not any other place in the town that we can develop housing.
Well, the existing plan points to this.
Right, I'm not arguing. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm not arguing that. But, I mean, it can go both ways.
I think that's all we have. Unless there are any questions.
I mean, again, because, you know, would you be in agreement that what we're looking for, with Tom getting together with the engineers prior to scheduling a public hearing and prior to this going to planning, that I think to be fair to the planning board, the questions that we're raising, they should have that information. Otherwise, we're going to be asking for the same thing all over again, and then we're going to have another meeting. I mean, I'm trying to be as efficient with your time, your client's time, and the public and the planning board to say, this project is going to go forward. These are all things that we're going to need to see and discuss. So why don't we just get to that point?
Yeah,
Can I ask a question?
no objection to Mr. Principe speaking to the engineers. I think that would be a very positive thing, and also speaking to the Bristol County Water Authority and putting them in a better position so if we have any showstopper issues here of passing this, other than issues of improvements somewhere in the system. We should have that discussion and gain that information before there's a hearing scheduled, and we can work with you on that. We will have to agree to disagree if the real ask here is that we sort out all the issues that will be handled at master plan, preliminary plan, final plan, all before we have a master plan public information meeting, not even a public hearing. That's something that I would not recommend, and I think it's highly unlikely that would be deemed acceptable. The whole purpose of the master plan stage of the major land development project is to present conceptual information that identifies the issues, and the engineering to solve those issues occurs as part of the preliminary plan. And other permits like county water permits, DEM permits, federal permits occur in the final plans. So, you know, we're not going to do all of that over the next several weeks before we have a public information meeting. But we will do the important things to make sure there's not a showstopper issue facing this project that would make any concept unworkable.
Mr. DeSisto?
Yes, thanks, Bob. Just a quick question, and I'll make a follow-up comment to what I just heard. What is the deadline for the planning board to make a decision on this application?
It's 120 days.
100.
I understand it's 120 days from the date that the application was certified. What day is that?
It's 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Okay. So this is the advice that I've given this board in the past, and I'll repeat it here. And, you know, Mr. Landry has heard this from me before, not only in this community, but in other ones too. When you talk about the conceptual review for master plan, the main thing that the board will have to decide is the ability of this particular parcel of land to carry the number of units, whatever those unit proposal is, this particular one or others. And for a development of this size, necessarily there has to be engineering information to determine whether or not there's sufficient infrastructure and other physical issues as to whether or not that conceptual plan works. So I do think it's appropriate what you've asked for here. And I know the engineers that have been engaged by the town will be working on that. But that's important information for the planning board to reach a decision on the master plan. This isn't just a situation where they're going to take a look at a plan and say, yep, this works. There has to be some backup to that. They have to be able to make sufficient findings of fact to approve an application, any application, but particularly an application like this, which with the number of units that are proposed. So I do think that you're on the right track on this. At least that's my advice, so that the board can have the information it needs to make a proper master plan decision.
Can I speak, Bob?
Dr. Weed?
Yeah.
Dr. Weed is representing the Conservation Commission.
As is often the case, our concern has to do with environmental issues as well. And in particular, in a site this large, on a relatively small footprint, stormwater runoff is a concern. I see 2 detention ponds on the plan that I have in front of me. Our concern in the past has been not only the proper construction of those to handle events like a 100-year storm, but also maintenance issues on that. So we would like to see in the plan not just the construction of the pond, but who's going to maintain it. We've had issues in other places in town where the detention or retention pond is constructed but never maintained.
Mr. Weed, that's correct, but that is an issue actually for the preliminary plan stage. And at that point, what would happen is particularly for an application of this nature, the applicant would need to provide the necessary documents showing not only how the detention basins will be maintained, but a maintenance schedule, and also language which I'd recommend that the town have, that if it is not sufficiently maintained, that the town would have the right to enter the land and perform the necessary work, and then charge off that work to the property owners, and if necessary, lien the property too. And that's standard. That's something that applications of this nature happen, but that would be at the preliminary plan stage, not master plan.
Good.
I just wanted to ask Chief Borges if he's got anything that he would like to add.
No, not at this time.
Thanks, Chief. So how do you want to proceed, Mr. Landry?
I'll speak to our clients, Mr. Rulli, and I'll be in touch with you about scheduling. I'll encourage Mr. Principi to work with the engineers as soon as possible so that we can determine for ourselves how long it would take to manage, at least for master planning purposes, the engineering conclusions that we're needing. So we think that the hydrology consultants report from Bristol County Water, that's a core determination that should have that. I think if we supply the information, we'll have to assume in good faith that the consultant and the authorities are not going to take forever. All of that included, we've seen those consultant reports be issued on a few companies that are putting those to be usually very efficient. It's based on agro information. That type of thing seems to be more than reasonable for the master plan stage. But I can't tell you how long we think that it's going to take to get through that. several months here for there has to be a master plan public information meeting. I can give you a call, Mr. Woolley, within the next week, to let you know what we're doing. And if I can give you any more feedback on where we might know. I'm not interested in putting board in a difficult position where they run out of time and have to scramble the whole meeting. And I don't think we're not gonna do that if you can't agree on how much you really need for the master plan state. And we'll ask you to just schedule. We'll vote. In the required time, yeah, and a reasonable extension time for that. I don't remember one instance where we have to redo that in 40 years that I've been doing this. So we appreciate your comments, and I will circle back to you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.